an old New England farm, and a house that was promised and never built. The English is gentle, just follow along. Sarah has asked for 40 years. Count what she moves instead. We begin out in the field. One April morning, Sarah found a hole in the field. It was square at the corners, with low gray stones already along one side. It was a foundation. The stone walls that a building stands on. Her husband Adoniram was putting up a fourth barn, the farm building where the cows live in winter and the hay is kept. Dry grass, cut in summer to feed them. 40 years ago, Adoniram stood on that ground and told her he would build her a new house there. Their house had 4 small rooms, and nobody had made it bigger since. Sarah asked him about it that evening, the way she always asked. He said he had nothing to say and went out to the horses. He went ahead with the barn. He carried on with his plan, whatever she said. By September, it stood finished. New boards, a wide high hay door, and nothing in it for her. On an October Wednesday at 6, Adoniram put the old horse in the cart. He was going 40 miles to buy a young one and would be back on Friday. Sarah came out to the gate with his coat. "Before the cows go into that barn," she said, "will you talk to me about the house?" "I haven't got time for that this morning," he said. He took the coat, climbed up, and drove down the lane. Sarah watched until the cart was out of sight. There was no point in asking again. 40 years of asking had never changed anything. So she stopped. She walked into the kitchen, looked at the 4 small rooms, and made up her mind once and for all. She decided, and this time she did not change it back. 3 phrases. When you make up your mind, you decide and stop going back and forth. Sarah had made up her mind about that house many times, and each time she let it go again. When you do something once and for all, you do it so it does not have to be done again. And if there is no point in doing something, doing it will not change anything. At noon, Sarah put the dinner on the table and said one sentence to her son and daughter. "We are moving into the new barn." Sammy was 18. He put down his fork. "Father." "Your father comes home on Friday," Sarah said. "Ellen is getting married in the spring, and there is no room in this house to hold a wedding in. I have had enough of asking for one." Ellen was 20. "You have made up your mind," she said. It was not a question. Then she began taking the plates down. They got to work that cold afternoon. They started at once. Chairs, dishes, pans, the mirror. By evening, the kitchen table stood in the middle of the barn floor. The place smelled of cut boards. Along one side were the stalls, the narrow spaces where cows stand, and Sarah had swept them out. There were no partitions, no thin inside walls to divide a big space into rooms. One long floor, and the high hay door open to the bare field. Ellen looked across the yard at the dark windows of the house. "What will he say?" "He will see it," Sarah said. "Bring the lamp." On Thursday, they got to work again at first light, and went ahead with the heavy things. Sammy backed the cart up to the kitchen door. The beds came apart. Sammy and Sarah carried the stove across the yard. 2 men from the next farm watched over the wall. Sarah passed them with the clock in her arms and did not say a word. By 11, the kitchen was empty. 4 walls, 1 window, and a clean square where the stove had stood for 40 years. Sarah swept it, shut the door, and carried the broom across the frosty yard. By noon, the whole village knew. Silas Hoyt walked up from the store and stood at the gate with his hat in his hand. He said that people were talking. "I know," Sarah said. He had not come to argue, and he did not. There was no point in it. Her beds were already in the barn. He asked if she wanted him to tell them anything. "Tell them the cows are not in yet," Sarah said, "and we are." Silas Hoyt laughed, put his hat on, and went back down the frozen lane. 4 more phrases. When you get to work, you start the job right then, not later. When you go ahead with something, you carry on with what you planned, even when there is a reason to stop. If you do not say a word, you say nothing at all. Sarah passed the watching men and said nothing. And when you have had enough of something, you are no longer willing to carry on. By 4 o'clock, there was nothing left to carry. The table stood on the barn floor with the chairs round it. The beds were made up in 2 of the stalls. The clock ticked on a shelf by the door, and the kitchen across the yard was empty once and for all. Sarah sat down on the wide doorstep with the low October sun on her face. She was 62, and she had had enough of asking. So she had stopped and carried the beds across instead. Then she got up and cooked the potatoes for supper. Adoniram came back on Friday afternoon, while it was still light, with a young brown horse behind the cart, and stopped in the yard. The kitchen door stood open, and there was nothing behind it. Across the yard, in the barn doorway, his daughter was laying the table for supper. Sammy took the horse. Nobody had agreed on what to say, and nobody said anything. Adoniram stood there a while in the cold. Then he walked to the barn and went in. He looked at the beds in the stalls, the stove with its pipe through the wall, the clock on the shelf. He looked at it all slowly, the way a man looks over a field. Then he sat down on a box by the door and did not say a word for a long time. "We'll put in partitions," he said. The partitions went up before the snow. In the spring, Ellen was married on that floor, with the wide door open to the field. Here it is again, in short. A hole in April where a house had been promised and a 4th barn on it. 40 years of asking, and one Wednesday when Sarah made up her mind once and for all there was no point in asking again, and she had had enough of it. They got to work at noon, went ahead with the stove and beds, and Adoniram came home and did not say a word. What did Sarah do for 40 years? Then what did she do that Wednesday? And what did Adoniram finally do in that barn? A hole in April, a cart in the frost, and 4 words in a barn on Friday. Now play it one more time and use the clock. When the story reaches a new hour, stop and tell that hour in a sentence of your own. The phrases will come back with the hours. A second listen in your own voice beats 3 quiet ones. Nobody has shut that barn door since. Go and find the next one.